Cascade Gardeners. I'm Shayla Cook. I'm here on behalf of Cascade Water Alliance and Cascade Gardener Program. Today, we are speaking with Lisa Taylor on microclimates and landscape zones. Let's dig in. Lisa Taylor is a freelance garden educator and author. For Lisa, eating is the main reason for growing plants. Welcome, Lisa. It's great to see you again.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Nice to see you, Shayla. Tonight, I have three objectives. One is to show you how to make a site map. The next is to show you how to assess your elements and your landscape zones. And our final objective is that you have success in putting the right plant in the right place so the plant thrives and you have an easy time taking care of it. Shall we get started?
Let's go.
All right. So first of all, in order to put the right plant in the right place, you've got to know your place. And one way to get to know your place is to create a site map. And as far as I can think, there's three ways to go about making a site map. Now, we want to make a drawing of your property. And most importantly, we want to make sure we capture all the things that are permanent. The buildings, the sidewalk, the driveway, any kind of outbuildings and plants, things that aren't going to move around. We want to capture those on our site map. So we have three ways to go about that. One is to do a scale drawing. One is to do a rough sketch, and one is to do what I call a Google sketch. So let's talk about those three. And you can find the one that feels right for you because they all will work for this first bit of assessing your elements and your landscape zones. So let's talk about a scale drawing. It's the most accurate way to capture what's going on in your property or on your property. You're going to need some graph paper. You're going to need some patience and endurance because it does take quite a while to make a scale drawing. You'll need a long tape measure. And I was happy to see that when I Googled that, you can get one from between $10 and $20. So it's not a big deal. If you're going to do a scale drawing, you'll want that long 100-foot tape measure to make sure you get everything accurate. And you'll need a friend because it's really hard to make those measurements alone. So the second one is a rough sketch, and that's just what it is. You're going to make a rough sketch of your property. So with both of those, what we want to do first is to get the perimeter drawn and then start to place things where they go. With the scale drawing, you're going to measure down and across and find those points, the edge of your house, the side of the building, and other things. And you want to try to get those as accurate as you can. Now, when you get your graph paper, they're usually bigger than an 8x11. And I think you need an 8x11 for this project because at the end of having your map drawn, you're going to want to make a bunch of copies. And an 8x11 just fits in stuff, it fits in a peachy or it fits in a 3-ring binder, and anything that's bigger is just going to be harder to deal with. So I had to trim down my graph paper, and you'll want to figure out if you want to do, 1 square per foot or 1 square per 5 foot. Anyway, the accuracy of the scale drawing is second to none, but it's not for everyone. It can be intimidating, and it can seem difficult enough that people won't do it. So I don't want you to get too hung up on that. A rough sketch will give you an idea where everything is in relation to each other thing in your landscape. It can also be a little tricky because how do you start if you're not an artist, if you haven't done drawings like this? So that's where the Google sketch comes in. Shayla, you're going to love this one.
I can't wait to hear about it.
So what you do is go to Google Maps and you find your property, and then you go to satellite view and you zoom in and take a screenshot of your property. And then you can edit that and crop it so it's just your property with all your house and your plants and all that. And then you can send it to yourself and you could sketch it on your monitor or you could print it out. So that's a great way to get a basic outline. Now, I did that for mine, and I got a nice drawing like that, and it includes all of the things. I also marked like where my kitchen was because I'm an edible gardener, and I know that putting edible plants near the kitchen is a great practice. So I labeled a few other things, and this is just a typical map, that a typical layout for a typical urban resident property. Now I've got this. I go outside and walk around and add anything else. I want to make sure that I add my hose bibs and anything else that didn't quite come out in the Google sketch, in that satellite view, until I get a map that I feel pretty good about. Then I take this map and I make many copies. Keep my original in a safe place and use the copies for all the rest of this. So now I've got something that I can use to start to track my different elements and landscape zones. So let's talk about elements. And by elements, I'm talking sun, soil, water, and air. Those are the things that your plants are going to need. They'll also need care, and that's where our landscape zones come in. So let's talk a little bit about sun. Like, all plants need kind of different amounts of sun. Some like full sun, some like part shade, some like full shade. And so identifying those areas will help us to match plants that like those conditions. So full sun is like 6+ hours continuous sun. Part shade is like 3 to 6 hours of sun that's continuous, maybe a little dappled shade. And full shade means 0 to 3 hours of sun. And a lot of us have those full shade places in our yard because we have full grown mature landscapes with trees and shrubs that create a lot of shade. So here's what you do. Pick a sunny day between April and August. And I think June is the premium time to go do your sun assessment because the sun is at its highest angle. But doing it between April and August also is going to give you a sense about what your early and late sun exposure is going to be like. So a whole day where you're just kind of committed to checking out the sun. Now, you could do your whole site, or you could just pick a couple areas to focus on. From the time you get up or the sun hits that area, you're going to just track it. Set your timer for an hour, and every hour, look out the window or go outside and see where the sun is. And then on your map, you can draw the lines that show where the sun is or where the shade is. And I like to just put a little time. Sun starts at 6 a.m. and then shady by 2. Let's see. So if I want 6 hours, that's a full sunspot because that's got 8 hours of sun. So I found that doing one map that was just sun made it much easier, and actually did it over a couple of days because it was hard to do the whole yard on one day. I got distracted, and it's a long time to be checking out your yard through a whole day, especially in June when we have like 16 hours of sun. So anyway, picking a couple of areas and making that assessment, that's a great way to check out your sun. The next thing is soil. And, for your annual vegetables and flowers, they need the best soil. And we call that well-drained fertile soil, or fertile well-drained soil, however you like it. Other plants can deal with a sandier condition or a soggier condition or a more heavy soil. So make some notes about what you've observed. Think about your soil when it's wet. Is it soggy and sloppy, or is it well drained? Dig around and see what you find. Is it super hard and dry, even though it's been rainy for a few days? Make some notes about what your soil does, especially after large rain events or during the rainy season. We typically have a lot of wet soil during the winter, but it dries out in the summer. So what happens when that soil dries out? Is it loose and easy to dig, or is it like compacted clay? This will help you find the places that'll be the best for growing those things that need good soil, and it'll give you an idea about some places to look for plants that can tolerate things that are a little bit heavier, clay, or sandier, well drained. The next thing we have to do is water, and it's a little bit like the soil thing. First of all, observe how water reacts on your property. After big rainstorms, do you have ponding? Do you have standing water for a few hours after a big rain, or for a day or so? And then is it soggy and sloppy, or is it spongy? Do you see a lot of runoff? Are you worried about water ponding near your building? And going into your crawl space. So just think about water that comes down from the sky and how it reacts on your property, but also make note of where your hose bib is. How are you going to get water out to your plants? You're going to hook up a hose and run that out to your beds. You want to know where those hose bibs are. It's going to make a difference when you decide what kind of plants to put in what places. And finally, air. And, I know we say, keep your plants out of strong winds. And, I think we think of like windstorms, but really in urban and in residential settings where we've got houses and buildings, wind behaves very differently. It has to collapse and get really fast to go between two buildings. And so there are these wind channels and tunnels around our homes. So here's what we do. You may have already noticed some of them, but on a calm day, go out in short sleeves and walk around. Notice any plants that seem to be blowing when it seems actually quite calm, and feel it on your skin. And you'll be able to find the places that are just windy all the time. The reason we want to know about that is wind is drying, it's desiccating, it dries out the leaves of plants. It makes it harder for plant starts to really get started. So it's just something we need to keep in mind. For very tender plants, they might not be good to put them in a heavy wind tunnel, but other things that are a little hardier, drought tolerant, may not have any problems whatsoever. So we'll do a different site map for each of those elements, and we start to really see that we have, oh, this is a sunny, dry area. This is a cold, windy area. This is kind of a soggy, kind of stodgy, chilly, humid, just kind of stanky area. We'll start to get an idea of these different microclimates, and these are unique climates throughout your yard. You might find a really warm spot that would be perfect for growing some warm season veg, a place that warms up better than any other spot in your yard by doing this kind of assessment. There's no reason to put a tomato in that cold, stodgy, humid, stagnant space. That tomato's just not going to do well. But there are plenty of plants that actually like it there. Some of our native plants might be a perfect choice for those difficult areas. So now we've got an idea about how sun, soil, water, and air move around and change and are on our properties. We're not done yet. We have to figure out how we are going to be able to care for those plants. And that's where the landscape zones come in. Landscape zones are how we use our space. And so those are different for everybody, for every place, for every family. We use our spaces differently. It's going to tell us how animals and people use the space. And then we can start to match the kinds of plants to the spaces that we use so that we can make sure it's easy to care for them. So let's talk about it. Am I going too fast for you, Shayla?
No, you're doing just great. I'm just thinking about all the things that I'm going to do after this presentation.
Well, this one really was a game changer for me because you can find a sunny spot and it might be just exactly what your plant needs, but it might be totally wrong for you as far as how you can care for it. So with landscape zones, we sort of think about them in the areas that we use most and the areas we use least and what we do in those areas. So if you think about zones, zero zone is your house. And the first zone here, I've got a flashcard. Zone 1, that is the first, that is number 1, and it's our outdoor area. It's the area we frequent most. I hope that's going the right direction.
It's perfect.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
thank you.
So this is our outdoor living area. This is a place you find yourself going without thinking a couple of times a day. So these are great places for high needs plants, things that like vegetables, for plant starts, for container gardens, for herb gardens, for your pots of basil. You're already out there. It's easy for you to take care of those plants. So zone 1, outdoor living, great place for those vegetables, flowers, and herbs, your edible plants, things that need your attention a lot. Now, zone 2 is a semi-intensive area, and what I mean by that is the outer edge of our outdoor living area. And so it's just a little bit further out. We find ourselves there, but not several times a day, definitely several times a week. So this is a great place for your shed, your compost bins, your chicken coop. It is also a great place to put larger gardening efforts. It might be a decent place to put some edible perennials or a small orchard or some berry vines. Number 3, look, I have only 5. Somehow I lost number 4, but number 3 is our large farming zone. And that, again, it's going to really feel like work to go out there. But if you want a big rectangle of a garden, this is the place to go. Larger crops, bigger orchard. It's also a good place for your wildflowers. Now, speaking of wildflowers, zone 4 is a great place. I thought I had them all, but one of them disappeared somewhere in the zones. Zone 4 is a great place for your wildflower buffers, your drought-tolerant plants. This would be a great place for a lavender border, things that don't need your attention after they've become established. You might go out there once or twice a year, maybe to mulch, maybe to gather some lavender bouquet or something like that. But really, it's not a place you have to go very often. You'll look at it a lot more than you'll actually be there. But that's a great place to put those things that, again, just need help for a couple of years to get established, and then they're on their own. Now, zone 5, that is a place not to put anything. It's a place, it's a place where you never go. It's behind the shed. It's down that slick side of the house where it's all soupy and slick and you feel like you're going to fall. And there's a red twig dogwood that slaps you in the face every time you try to go down there. This is a place, it could be right next to a zone 1, but it's a place you never go for one reason or another. Now, speaking of how zones arrange themselves, they don't arrange themselves according to a ripple. You could have a zone 5 next to a zone 1. It's really about how you use it and for whatever reason. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I love this idea. I took some overhead page protectors and I used a vis-a-vis marker and I just did my overlay. So I have my map and my zones. And this family in this particular map just doesn't go outside very much. There's not a lot of zone 1, not a lot of zone 2, but an awful lot of zone 4, and a few things. But I think that if they thought about where they might put another garden, somewhere in that area between their deck and the shed might be a good place if they get enough sun and the soil is good. The water is really close by. So that's how you assess your site, how you draw a site map so that you can start to match the plant to the place so that the plant thrives, but also so that you can take care of it. If you end up putting a high needs plant way out in zone 4, it's going to be difficult for you all the time to take care of it. Whereas if you put a plant that doesn't really need a lot of your care way out in your landscape, you can keep the things that need you more close by in your outdoor living space. I hope that helps you to make better choices about how you put your different garden elements around your property. And I hope that you have success this season in making your landscape.
Now, I'm envisioning that if somebody has bought a new piece of property, they could start with one map and
Yeah.
figure out how they're going to convert it into what they want, which would be the end result would be completely different. So we'll have to talk about that at some point.
Well, we didn't even talk about putting in things in the landscape like a water feature or raised beds or native plants or pollinator plants. We didn't even talk about that. We just got to the place where we know what our site's like, and now we can start to research all the different plants and the features that we want to add. And that's what's great about having that site map and all those copies is that you can make your landscape into anything you want and then decide how far you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your insight. I'm really looking forward to digging in. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.